20-minute presentation.
Okay, I've never done anything in 20 minutes, but...
30.
All right, so who stole my clicker? There you go. All right, good. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to talk about starting a business and sort of what it takes to start a business, and a little bit about the whole process. And then, as Melissa said, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A and everything else. And I want to start with 30 seconds of background. So I've been building businesses for about 45 years, done pretty much everything across 7 or 8 different industries, and you know, I have actually come to the conclusion that while you can't make somebody an entrepreneur, you can teach somebody who has the passion and has the interest to be an entrepreneur a whole lot of smart things about how to do this process. And so it's not easy, and I think it's really interesting to know that if anything, this continues to build. Everybody aspires to be their own boss. Everybody aspires to do this. But amazingly enough, just to get to the starting line is a huge hurdle, and a huge number of people think that they want to do this and then discover a variety of reasons why they don't. I teach, and I'm the CEO of Tribeca Flashpoint Media Arts Academy, so this last very frightening piece of information is one we usually suppress, but you know, which suggests that when all the dust settles, it's not clear that there's anything that's predictive as to education with respect to entrepreneurial success. So let me start by giving you a few observations. Having looked at literally thousands of business plans over dozens and dozens of years, the thing that you learn is even the best VCs, maybe 2 out of 3 out of 10 businesses will succeed beyond their wildest imagination, and that's the only reason they get to stay in business. The failure rate is enormous. But the last point here is really interesting. We live in this insane tech-driven culture now, and what's so interesting is that people sort of overestimate the short-term value of technology. You know, the barriers to entry in virtually any business now are close to non-existent. That doesn't mean anything in terms of the likelihood of success. If anything, it's gotten to be harder and harder to be successful because there's so much competition, there's so much noise, there's so much going on in terms of the environment. So, but it's interesting that ultimately technology that drives productivity improvements, cost savings, time savings, and things like that is the winning game in town. It's absolutely going to change everything. And you know, technology and digital are sort of like hydrochloric acid. They're going to burn through every single business. Every business in the world is migrating from analog to digital. This presents enormous opportunities, and there isn't an industry that's going to be protected or insulated from this. So who are entrepreneurs? Fundamentally deluded people. Okay? People who, if anybody told them how long it was going to take or how hard it was going to be, they would have never started. There's just no question, and every entrepreneur will tell you that. But, you know, the inexperience and the lack of knowing that is actually a competitive advantage, because 1 million people know how hard it is and they're completely paralyzed. You know, they would love to do something different. They would love to try something new. They're afraid to do that. So what does it take? Here's a quick list, and it's very interesting. You know, there are differences in a lot of large companies, and we deal with a lot of large companies. And one of the things that we deal with is the fact that there are a lot of different kinds of entrepreneur. You know, there are folks who just want to settle for a change in their lifestyle. And I was with the woman yesterday who started Take Your Daughter to School and to work. And she said an interesting thing. She said a lot of women-owned businesses, a lot of women started businesses, stay small because, one, there's a sort of a fear of growth, because that's going to require you to give up and make other kinds of lifestyle choices. And two, she said, and this was really interesting because I think of men as being sort of controlling and possessory and everything else. She said that women have a very difficult time in terms of delegation, and so that keeps their businesses smaller than they would ordinarily be. But this is a pretty interesting continuum, and it's the continuum from a relatively rational to completely insane, and that's how it goes. If you want to be a world beater, you're signing up for a different kind of life. You're signing up for a whole bunch of trade-offs that really are things that only in retrospect do you see some of the sacrifices and some of the choices that you made, but that's how businesses get built, and that's how change works as well. So for me, one of the most important parts of this whole process is to understand the sort of the entrepreneurial mindset, and it's never, ever about the finish line. It's always about the process. It's always about wanting to mix it up, wanting to create things, loving that sort of tension and stress and mess that's a part of the process. And if you can't cope with that, if you need sort of organization and order and predictability, then this really isn't a place that you want to be. You know, the pilots describe their life as, you know, hours and hours of boredom, you know, with a few seconds of terror in the middle. But, you know, we describe being an entrepreneur as being, you know, what Andy Grove used to say, and that is that being paranoid is not a disadvantage. It's not something, you know, the truth is there's always somebody trying to do your business cheaper, faster, more efficiently. And so, you know, you're always looking over your shoulder. That's just the nature of this environment. And if anything, it's getting more so. So, when I think of big companies, I think of big companies as having a set of values that, frankly, startups can't afford. You can't afford to sort of pursue some of these wonderfully grand apple pie and mom kind of virtues. You have to understand that in a startup, it's life-threatening, it's existential, and in fact, if you're going to be an innovative startup, it's even worse. In an innovative startup, you have to have a whole set of sort of rules and procedures, and you know, we've spent a lot of time developing these, we've spent a lot of time understanding these, the ability to fail, to accept failure, to fail quickly, but not to be sort of accepting of failure, because the people who make room for failure in their businesses, you can be sure that they will fail, okay? But the people who understand that it's part of an iterative process, they can be quite successful in this space. So this is a list of what it takes. Here's the deal. It takes a certain set of things, and then if you have those things, if you bring those to the party, then you will discover that you can be trained, you can be equipped with tools, you can be taught the processes for success. So the first one is chutzpah, and this is a French term, not really. But what it means is, why not you? In other words, why not shoot for the stars? Why settle for anything less than what you can be and the opportunities? Because there will be a ton of people who will tell you why you can't do something. It's up to you sort of not to listen to that and to take it into account, but not to let it hold you back. So number one is just this desire to go for it. Number two is that if you wait around till it's perfect, if you wait around until all the stars align, if you wait around for just the right train, you're too late. Okay, it just keeps moving. You got to get going, you know, and you get started. Michael Jordan, you know, is the original author of the famous "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Get out there, get started, get better. That's a core discipline. And you know, if again, it's a process that you have to understand is totally susceptible to failure, totally susceptible to experimentation. That's perfectly fine, but if you don't get started, you're not going anywhere. Number three is to understand that we can actually outwork people, okay? Even hyper-talented people, okay? Effort trumps everything. And, you know, we know that there are a lot of bright people. That doesn't make them successful in any way, shape, or form. What makes you successful is this ridiculous work ethic and a commitment to doing that. This is one of the ads for our school, and you know, I love this sort of. I've spent all this time explaining to people who have no talent, you know. But the idea of this is really important, because when businesses are looking for solutions, when they're looking for great employees, when they're looking for people to partner with, they're looking for people who will go the extra mile, who have that energy, who have that commitment, who have that willingness to do whatever it takes in order to be successful. We have built a lot of businesses, we've built a lot of facilities over the years, and one of the interesting parts of the process was, in every instance, people would come to us and say, you know, this is Barbara Pollock is here, and you know, we've literally built maybe 500,000 square feet of space over the last few years. And people would come every single day and say, the wall could be really straight or on time. You know, they would say the wall could be, you know, less expensive, but it would be a little ripple here. And we were like, you know, fuck you, okay? And we were like, you know, this is a sacred mission. We're building a school, we're building a facility. Go, you know, sort of shortchange some other customer. But for us, we're not required to evaluate these choices. These are bad choices. You know, we want it all. And so this idea that it's a slippery slope is really important. The minute that you settle, the minute that in a negotiation, in a discussion, you take less than is the fair value of your time and your services, what you're going to discover is that it just gets worse from there. I mentioned perseverance, absolutely critical. We say that there is no particular end to the day. You know, this is one of the problems with being a business owner and running your own business. You don't get to leave it at the office. You know, fundamentally there is no office. It's a 24/7 kind of situation. You need to be jealous of your time. You need to understand that people are constantly competing for your time, and it's the scarcest real estate, it's the scarcest resource of anything that's out there. And so you have to understand opportunity costs. One of the things that we discover that young students do not understand is that the unconscious choices they're making by pursuing things and not understanding that everything you're doing, you better be asking yourself, am I moving the ball forward? Am I improving things? Am I trying to get to my objective? And if not, then you need to be doing something else. So the other sort of part of this, there are no good excuses, is this issue of, you know, basically you need a really thick skin, okay? Life is not remotely fair, and in addition to not being fair, sometimes things just don't work out. You could be the best intentioned, the most sincere person. You could be the oldest person in the room. All of these things are wonderfully virtuous, but they don't really drive the train. I mean, what drives the train is results. And so you need to understand that there are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be people that, for no good reason, don't want to buy your product or your service. That's just how it is, and that's just another part of the process. It's always easy to find somebody else to blame. It's always easy to create an explanation or an excuse. And basically, you know, we're just intolerant of that. We would much rather say, it didn't work, we fell on our face, whatever. It doesn't, it's a waste of breath, first. And second of all, people who are sort of engaged in the excuse process are fundamentally looking backwards. They're not really looking forward in terms of focus. So the real task is to grab hold of these situations and make the change happen and sort of move the process forward. I think you need to also understand that if you're in this for ego, if you're in this for sort of personal glorification, if you're in this even to make a lot of money, it's way too hard a job, way too hard a job, okay? You need to be in this to build something important and to solve a problem and to do something that lets you say, I'm engaged in something that's bigger than me, something that's more important than just me and my narrow things. And you should, if you're totally blessed, you know, you'll be in a situation where you have the joy of coming to work every day and doing something you're enthusiastic about. And that's really the, you know, the holy grail of this whole process. Because if you can do that, you'll, you know, as they say, you know, it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true, you'll never work a day in your life. And so being in control with all the anxiety, with all the grief, but being in control of a business that you're building is a great privilege and it's a great joy. But it's tough. It's very tough. What we have discovered is the people who do it are the people who don't really have a choice. Ultimately, like me, they're really bad employees. They're fundamentally unemployable by other people. But what they really are driven by is a desire to do something where it's not a sort of an optional thing. It's not a sort of I'll do this thing. It's a thing that you commit to 200%, and there really isn't necessarily a safety net. There really isn't much in the way of alternative solutions. And if you don't do that, then you find that you're just too tentative to be successful. And that's a big part of the process. So, I don't know why these ads are in here other than I always like this one. So, the idea of a lot of this has to do with the perception of you as a business person. And again, it's all salesmanship. It's all energy. It's all passion. It's all contagious if you do it right. Because another huge job of being an entrepreneur is to be the world's greatest recruiter, to attract other people to your business, to excite other people about your opportunity, to find and attract investors. That's all part of this process. But ultimately, if they don't believe in you, it's not going to happen. And so, just again, and we'll give these to Melissa if you want to have these for reference. There are, a very finite number of things that we know we can apply to business plans every day of the week, and these explain why businesses fail. And it's a mathematical, scientific process. If you aren't, if you're solving a problem or creating a solution for something that isn't a problem, then you're not going to find a real customer need. If you're not helping to improve and create a real business, if it's too easy to copy, and especially in this world of riffs and replication and everything else where everybody can instantly knock off a whole lot of what's going on. But fundamentally, this is a good checklist. The other good checklist is specifically within the software space. We found another couple of things, which is you have to be building something that's relatively broad. It can't be a single feature, because what you discover is you're the Lone Ranger. You discover that you're out there, and then somebody comes along and wraps your solution into a broader solution, or an easier solution, or a more robust solution, all of those things. One of the biggest sins of all is number 4 here, which is people think, and it's interesting, I've been teaching for years in Israel, and in Israel they spend 99.5% of the money on a given company doing everything but marketing, and then they think the market will simply find this great product and the world will beat a path to their door. That's called distribution cluelessness. And so these things land over here, and they say, why didn't everybody buy our product? And the answer is that getting the best product out there is less than half the equation. The real equation is finding the market and getting the thing distributed, partnering with the right kind of people. And again, all of these things, it's amazing how you can use these as aids. You can use these to test your idea, to test your business in a real sense. It's like, what are my thoughts? And if you were asking somebody, if somebody said to you, will you invest in this business? These are the questions. These are the things, the concerns that you want to be dealing with. And another, fairly straightforward thing is we live in a world of, aggressive early adopters, but it's a real problem. And it's a real problem because those early adopters, the only thing that they do faster than adopt things is abandon them. And it's frightening. These kids today, an application will be on their phone 2 minutes. And if they don't love it and start to use it religiously, it's gone. And so the abandonment curve is even faster than the adoption curve. And that can be very misleading. It can also be very problematic to, God forbid, you get one large customer and you think you have a business. Okay, what you have is one large customer. And so working your way across this curve and understanding that there are stages of market and product development, and also understanding the slinky. And only those of us of a certain age understand what the slinky is. But the idea is momentum. And the idea is that markets take a long time to change. They take a long time to adopt new products and services. But when they do, it's sort of a nightmare of good graces. And what that means is, lo and behold, everybody wants the product. And then you discover that you have to ramp up and scale and build and be able to accommodate demand at inordinately high levels in a very short period of time. So you need to be prepared for that. And it's a very interesting thing that many more businesses, young businesses, many more businesses fail from success than from anything else. Success is what blows them up, and that's really tough. So, I like to say that change, when it eventually comes, happens very quickly. It's overcoming all that nasty resistance that takes what feels like an entire lifetime. So, if you're going to make a plan, just a couple of tips. First, make it concrete. Actually have a plan. Don't say people need this. Say people need this, and here's the solution, or here's the product or service that will address and fill that need or that pain point or that problem. Pay attention to the details. Vision that isn't sort of rooted in detail is basically a hallucination. And lastly, this is right out of the movie business, and we teach film at Flashpoint, but it's absolutely true that the movie never turns out to be what the screenplay was. But if you didn't have the screenplay, you couldn't get the movie financed or made ever. Same thing with a business plan. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be right. It's not even something you should pay attention to beyond a certain point. But you should use it to keep score, and you should use it to sort of generally introduce the idea and what you're looking to do. When we look at a business, we look at 4 parts of the opportunity. We look at the market, we look at the management, we look at the product or service, and then we look at all the financial consequences. But here's a tip, okay? If these were all the reasons that an investor or your parents or your spouse or anybody else is going to say, go ahead and do this, here's what's very interesting. If you look in the parens, you discover that every one of these, the E's, stand basically for executive. Okay? And so when the dust settles, the best plan in the world, the best product, all of this stuff doesn't matter, because ultimately people bet on you. And this goes right back to that thing that I said before about they want to believe that you're going to take no prisoners. They want to believe that you're passionate. They want to believe that you're going to work like a fool, and all of these things. So they really are focused on the entrepreneur. That's the principal focus. All the rest of the stuff, can come along. And frankly, most of these companies, especially in California, they absolutely say, we hire teams of good entrepreneurs, of committed people, and then if their business doesn't work out, we'll find them a business. I mean, they think that, it's a joke. They think it's that easy. It's not that easy. But the point is they're betting on talent more than anything else. And then lastly, as you're constructing your story, as you're constructing your elevator pitch, or whatever it is that you want to talk about, understand that you can kill yourself or you can make your life a lot easier if you just go through a couple of simple things. It's not good to say that my product will appeal to everyone with 2 eyes. Okay, that's probably a fairly broad market, right? And so, what you want to do is understand and make things realistic. And we see business plans all the time that have, it's not just a hockey stick, it's like a hockey stick attached to a skyrocket or some kind. So this doesn't happen in the real world. So a plan that says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then there's a big cloud, miracle happens here, and then I'm going to make a lot of money, right? Probably doesn't happen. So you can do anything that you want, but you can't do everything. Investors are constantly looking for focus, for the ability to say, I won't be distracted, I won't be chasing a million rabbits, I'll have a very clear idea of focus and product and service and approach and market, all of those things, very, very critical. And then ultimately understand that you can talk about technology, you can talk about marketing, you can talk about anything you want, but when the dust ultimately settles, it's building a team of really talented people. That's the only sustainable advantage in business today. Everybody can buy the technology eventually, everybody can get access to everything else, but what they can't get access to is a talented, motivated, passionate workforce. And that's all. Thank you very much.